Hello, class. This is your instructor responding to your answers for podcast 2 and short answer essay 3 questions. For podcast 2, we have Michelle Alexander, author of The New Jim Crow, sitting down with the journalist Bill Moyers to discuss the book. And while you'll read the book, the central argument in it is that the war on drugs is the new Jim Crow, and we, American society, are in denial of this. I asked you whether you thought if Michelle Alexander put forth good arguments or they had flaws, and what you thought about this notion that we are in denial of the new Jim Crow, that its true purpose, the war on drugs, is to create a system similar to but different from the old Jim Crow, an effort to try to create a stigma associated with blacks to keep them in their place, so to speak. Well, most of you thought, according to your responses, that the war on drugs certainly has its problems, but it is not a new Jim Crow. It is true that there are higher arrest rates for drug offenses among blacks, despite the fact that they have lower drug use rates. The higher arrest rates might be a byproduct of the higher violent crime rates in majority black neighborhoods. So the way this works is that police may be called to the same neighborhood block 2-3 times a night for shootings or something violence related. It is just more difficult to bust somebody for violence than it is to bust them for drugs. And the person who gets busted for drugs may or may not have anything to do with the shooting that happened. It's just that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time and happened to have drugs on him, and he was there where the cops could arrest him. And the person who shot somebody may be smart enough to get out of there, and people may not want to report him, the person who did the shooting, for fear of reprisal. They may be cynical of law enforcement generally, and many other reasons why this does not get reported. But the drug offenses are easier to catch people on, and so this is what we have. In response to Michelle Alexander's book, The New Jim Crow, the lawyer and professor George Foreman Jr. points out about how Black America, that is, Black community leaders and Black politicians such as Charlie Rangel, featured here, this is a 1979 photo, they helped to build mass incarceration. That it was a concern about violence growing in majority Black communities, and rightly or wrongly, they linked it to drugs. And while Michelle Alexander's argument sounds sort of conspiratorial, that it is a racist cabal of whites against blacks, although she doesn't really say that, what George Foreman Jr. is pointing out, who himself happens to be black, is that some of the most aggressive drug warriors were themselves black. Charlie Rangel, Jesse Jackson, just to name a couple. And so we need to take that into consideration when we are thinking about how it got to the point where the war on drugs was something that most people in U.S. society just accepted as a matter of course, that this is just how we handle this problem. The issue of denial of the harms that this war is becoming harder itself to deny. Also, the legitimacy of the war can be challenged on constitutional grounds. Consider what Larry Elder said, conservative in the previous podcast, with regard to alcohol prohibition back in the 1920s. Amendments to the Constitution were passed in order to make the sale of alcohol illegal. An amendment had to pass had to be passed to repeal that. So why not for the war on drugs? Seems much more sweeping than what we had for just alcohol, just singling out alcohol. So this is something we need to consider in terms of this notion of denial that Michelle Alexander points out, that this war, while it may or may not have a racist angle to it, it certainly can be challenged on just constitutional grounds. And this is something that people from the liberal and conservative side of the political aisle can both agree upon. The other thing that Michelle Alexander points out is the growth of the federal prison population and the punitiveness for drug crimes in the federal system. While, of course, most people who get arrested for crimes go to state prisons, some go to federal prison, and the federal system has been growing rapidly in the last several decades. And this is the very kind of thing that conservatives tend to complain about. Conservatives are always concerned about the growth of the federal government. And this is just one more example of how the federal government may have grown too powerful, and it may need to be shrunk back down. And a starting place might be to roll back some of the punitiveness in how people are sentenced for drug offenses at the federal level. You can see on the graphic, on the right, about the average length of stays between 1980 and 2011. It's gone up for drug offenses and actually gone down a little bit for other offenses. So that's interesting to note. As for short answer essay 3, this concerned black-white differences in violence and drug use. Your responses here were, again, varied, but some of you said something about how a party subculture among whites may help explain higher drug use among whites, whereas a subculture of violence among blacks helped to explain the higher rates of violence among blacks. So you cannot be really faulted for saying these things, because this is the same stuff that professional criminologists say, that it's something about the culture of whites that leads to higher rates of alcohol use and drug use, and something about the subculture among blacks that leads to higher rates of violence. Now, this is something I am intensely interested in trying to understand these differences. But I have to point out that redefining behavior as culture does not really have explanatory power. You can call it culture, but then you are tasked with looking for some other exogenous factors that would have caused the emergence of these cultures in the first place. And so some of you mentioned that multiple theories in criminology are needed, learning theories, subcultural theories, strain theories, and that's right. This is a hard nut to crack. There is no one theory in criminology that can explain these differing trends in criminal behavior among the populations of whites and blacks. So they can be easily discerned with any large data set. You look at it, grab a data set, look at it, you'll see higher alcohol use and drug use among whites and higher violence among blacks. And it's not as if someone's forcing them to do this. A lot of these are self-report studies, and they correlate across one another. So survey after survey tends to show this. And so this is a criminological theoretical conundrum that best I can tell, we have not figured this one out. We can say that yes, it has a cultural basis, some sort of subcultural basis, but again, in order for that argument to be satisfactory, you do need to point to some exogenous or outside factors that would explain the emergence of these cultures in the first place. Okay, so I hope this was, well, somewhat illuminating, and I will be posting other responses later on this course. And until next time, bye-bye.